Glacier National Park in northwest Montana is one of the most beautiful national parks in the entire United States. The park has over 1 million acres and over 700 miles of hiking trails. I had always wanted to visit this park for years, so on a recent trip to Montana, we set aside a day to explore it. Unfortunately, the clouds rolled in and changed the second half of our day, but here's how to make the most of a cloud-filled day in Glacier National Park. It's 7 a.m. We're leaving our hotel in West Glacier for our one day in the park. We technically stayed in the town of Columbia Falls, woke up early in the morning, grabbed some coffee, and then drove 25 minutes to the west entrance to the park. Made it to the entrance to Glacier National Park. After making it into the park, our first stop was at Lake McDonald in the southern town of Apgar to watch the sunrise. It was a beautiful and relaxing way to start our time in Glacier. From there, we headed to the visitor center, but it was relatively small, so we didn't spend much time there. We just grabbed a map and then headed out on the Going to the Sun road. This 50-mile road is the only one that goes through the park, and it's normally only open from late June to mid-October. We came at the end of September and it wasn't too busy and the road was still open. We're only like a few miles into the park and it's already hard not to pull out all the time. I think it's gonna be a long day. After passing Lake McDonald, our first stop was McDonald Falls. Don't miss it as it's an easy to miss pullout. Back in the car again, we continued to one of the most popular trails. This is our first hike in the park. It's the 1-mile loop known as the Trail of the Cedars. This paved and raised boardwalk trail is wheelchair accessible, and it's a great way to see cedar trees, which can be up to 80 feet tall. This is also the junction for Avalanche Lake, but we're staying with the Trail of the Cedars. At the halfway point, there's a bridge that goes over the creek and a great viewing platform for a waterfall that cascades between moss-covered rock. This is a nice, beautiful, quick trail that's worth taking. Now we're heading on to the next spot. After the hike, we started our drive along the Going to the Sun road, soaking in the views and making our way to the loop, which is a pull-out area next to the only switchback on the road. This is a great place to stop and get a view of Heaven's Peak out in the distance. As you continue on, note that this is a 2-lane road with not many turnouts and most people go pretty slow so they can take in the views. That's the Going to the Sun road down there, coming all the way up to where we're at. We took our time and pulled over constantly as we made our way to the Big Bend and the Weeping Wall, two of the most beautiful areas on the Going to the Sun road. There's so many beautiful pullouts. Be sure you take your time on this road. Our next planned stop was at Logan's Pass, which is about 32 miles from the entrance. Unfortunately, the visibility dropped and we couldn't see a single thing when we got there. So this is where we were planning on hiking at Logan Pass. Unfortunately, no visibility, and it's supposed to be like this the rest of the day. So we're gonna go down the east side, see if it gets any better. While this was a bummer since we were really excited about hiking at Logan Pass, we made the most of it and decided to stop at a few places we weren't planning on stopping on the way back down. Finally got below the cloud cover, we pulled out at this gorge parking area and we're going down to Bering Falls. The half-mile trail down to Bering Falls was stunning with lots of lush plant life and even some fall colors. I wasn't planning on doing this trail, but it ended up being one of my favorite stops in the park. When you make it down to the base of Bering Falls, you'll be greeted by a great 25 to 30 foot waterfall. It was flowing pretty good when we went, and it has a nice ledge that you can walk up to and sit right next to the waterfall. On the way back up, we stopped at Sunrift Gorge, which is in the same parking area and which is an awesome water-carved gorge with a stone walkway going alongside of it. Our last stop on the Going to the Sun road were the viewpoints that looked over St. Mary Lake, but unfortunately with the clouds, we couldn't see a lot. After exiting the park, we decided to go into the St. Mary Visitor Center, which is a lot bigger than the one on the west side of the park, and ask them what we should do. All right, so they said that Mini Glacier may be better, so we're gonna get some lunch and then head into that part of the park before leaving. There are not a lot of food options in St. Mary, but we found ourselves at Johnson's Cafe and it ended up actually being a pretty great spot for lunch. The Works omelet, breakfast for lunch. That was a pretty good food spot. 35 minutes to Mini Glacier. We're gonna see if we can actually see any mountains over there. The drive to Mini Glacier is stunning as it goes along Swift Current Creek and has many pullouts with beautiful views of the surrounding mountains. When we got to Mini Glacier, we headed to where the road ends to see what kind of views we could get, and then we went back to the lodge. We made it to Mini Glacier. Unfortunately, there's still a ton of clouds here and the parking is really difficult, but we're gonna go check out the lodge before we head out. To say the Mini Glacier area is beautiful would be an incredible understatement. Even with the cloud cover like it still was an amazing spot to see in the park. That being said, parking is difficult and it's incredibly popular, so know that going in. If you have the time, you can take a tour of the lake by boat, but we just went over to see the historic lodge. This beautiful 5-story hotel is the largest in the park and it was built in 1914 and then renovated in 2016. It reminded me a lot of the historic Ahwahnee in Yosemite National Park and I cannot wait to come back here and stay. I got a huckleberry latte. Amy got huckleberry hard cider. Which one would you choose in the comments? Cheers. There's a storm rolling in, so that's it for our time in Glacier National Park. Hopefully this gave you a little taste of what you can see if you visit the park. We already can't wait to come back and explore a little bit more since we got shut down on the second half of the day. We will see you guys on the next video.